Greetings, everybody. And Jesse, you're in the light a little bit. Got it. So welcome to our workshop. We were invited here in partnership with San Diego Food System Alliance. Want to give a big shout out to Sona and Ellie, who's really helped support us in coming out. Yes, and among all the staff here, all the volunteers, it's such a beautiful community. We're really humbled and privileged to be here. We are a national organization. We'll tell you a little bit about us, and then we'll also just get into our day. We're a partner and guide for reimagining practices that advance a just and thriving world. And we say we like to walk alongside our movement folks who are on the ground, working for food justice, sustainable communities, and our relationship to land. And so what we want to do is support folks that are in also the field themselves, and make sure there's leadership opportunities, political education, and places where we can experiment together. So we feel so honored to be able to come into a community space, to be in partnership with you all here. And we partner with both movements as well as folks in philanthropy that we deeply want to make connections here. A lot of us transverse both spaces, and what kind of power and possibility is available when we can connect deeply, both not in the work, but also in our hearts, as well as our political analysis. So that's what we're here to do today, and we're really grateful to be part of this philanthropic track today. So just our workshop session, our meeting purpose, you all know why we're here, but I'll just say for our goals, we'd like to provide a little bit of context of what drives our work and what we've seen really helpful in the field for folks who work in philanthropy, for resource mobilizers to actually move money quicker and faster, as well as really making bigger risk and bigger investments in really creating and investing in the regenerative economy that we all need, particularly in food justice here. We also just want to support, obviously, the work done by the Alliance. And I'm going to have you just step a little bit further and then identify any of the kinds of practices and relationships we need. We want to support, this is a very interactive workshop, so there'll be time where we'll be giving some framing, but we're really going to also support you all being in conversation with each other, as well as building on some of the work that the resource mobilizers in this region have already done. And we really want to ground and connect with the work of the folks that are on the ground. I just want to get a sense. We're talking about the just transition for philanthropy. Before I jump into that, I wanted to know, in your food justice and community work here, how many folks have been aware or have working knowledge of movement generations or climate justice alliance strategy for a transition? Just raise your hand. Awesome. Great. And how about folks that this is completely brand new and you're really here to just absorb? Awesome. Okay. So I'm glad there's a little bit of a mix. I saw hands go up, and I'm assuming in the middle. So this is an important space. This is a mixed learning space. And up here, and we'll have resources for this, but essentially we know and understand, at least from this framework, that we are functioning and trying to shift from an extractive economy here on your left. And the way that an economy works, it's connected by particular pillars that function interdependently with each other. Those are resources, those are how the labor and work and the purpose. And it's really framed by the worldview and values that a society holds or dominant culture. And it's also governance is often expressed in different ways. In the extractive economy, you can see here, there's a few logos here. We're going to be giving resources out, but Movement Generation has a beautiful zine that really goes into this. But it was our movement partners and Climate Justice Alliance and said, we are working to really shift systems around us and in our communities from an extractive economy by really pulling down power from these scales, from international, national to local, and really to shift resources, shift work into a living economy, one that is in relationship to one another, to the land, to all species on this world, one who has a worldview that this earth is sacred, that we are interested in our resources being used for regeneration, not the accumulation of wealth and resources, and that we are engaging in cooperation and co-stewardship of our power of this space. So this is could have a whole, week long. I was in Puerto Rico and got to work with this post oh my gosh, I'm forgetting that. But Yes, the hurricane. Remember the hurricane? Thank you. I was like, we're both like, thank you. I wish I had candy. I would throw it out to you right now. But we're really like, we'll go. But I think part of this, these are what folks are like living and working towards. What's beautiful about movement, folks, y'all here, you are working with the earth, you're working with the ground. This isn't theoretical. In philanthropy, it kind of is. And so that's why we're like, we got to do something about that. Because our movement partners said, how are you supporting bringing a just transition in the field of philanthropy? You can apply, because we are participants in an extractive economy. What can philanthropy do to actually be supporting the living economy? Keep going, Jesse.
So just to go a little bit deeper into this, I think something I've learned from movement generation is like really asking, what does economy mean? And so the root word of economy is eco, which means home. So ecosystem is all of the people and relationships in a home. Ecology is the knowledge or study of home. And then economy is the management of home. So when we looked at the visual that was just up on the screen, we see on one side, right, that the way an extractive economy is, like home is managed in a very specific way. And yet when we're looking at the regenerative economy or the living economy, we see that it's really co-stewarded in a very, very different way. And so just to kind of build on this, as Kimmy was sharing, there's different pillars of the economy: the resources, work, worldview, purpose, and governance. And the way that those are managed or stewarded based on the extractive economy or regenerative economy are very, very different. And so really with the Just Transition framework, we're really utilizing this as a strategy about how we can move from an extractive economy to a regenerative economy. And I just want to let folks know there is a sign-in sheet going around. We would love for you to go ahead and sign that sign-in sheet if you can. There's some great resources here. We have a link on the slide, but we do want to follow up with the slides for folks. I've seen a couple of folks taking pictures, and we welcome that, but we want to get those to you. There's a great resource that Movement Generation has, as Kimmy mentioned, with a zine and more details that we can share with you as a follow-up. So just wanted to provide kind of a brief overview. And also for today specifically, really pose this question for us to explore of like, Kimmy, can you tell us, what is philanthropy's role in the Just Transition?
All right, so here's a little snapshot of what that big blue was. And what we've done is talk to funders across, nationally, and we're a national organization, and talking to different folks that are really working at this intersection of social justice and philanthropy. And it is a small but mighty section. And so where we want to name in terms of that bigger vision of the just transition that philanthropy comes from, we actually are really working at this place of purpose, taking the enclosure resources that have been enclosed by wealth, profit over people, those resources that are just accumulating for perpetuity. We exist, all of the foundation dollars are in some ways linked to that. And so we kind of just accept it's our responsibility, really, to think about how are we divesting from dominant cultures, how do we both stop the bad and also build the new at the same time. And we want to say our purpose in philanthropy's role in the just transition is to turn extracted resources, that little dot on the red dot on the left, into resources for the regenerative economy, the blue dot here on the right. And why we are saying we exist here, partly is it's not our job or in philanthropy to say what those solutions are. In movement spaces, the just transition is about communities and people and political openings that allow people to create the solutions themselves based on wisdom that is created and passed down through generations as folks are being in relationship to each other. And so can you move to the next slide, Jesse? What we did here is kind of, in those brackets, pull this out for you. And this is what we're saying philanthropy's role is, and what we're supporting folks in philanthropy to align with resource mobilizers for just transition is really to understand our relationship here. Because we have a lot of power in many ways to move philanthropy from that left side, the extractive philanthropy, where the worldview is the charity model. Resources are often have legacies on stolen land, enslaved labor, and extraction of resources. And really, the work in philanthropy traditionally has been to really protect the donor's interests or the family's or accumulation of wealth. And so that's the purpose, is to maintain that enclosure of wealth. And the way it's usually governed is about systems that are usually tied to business, banking, academia, government. And so we really want to understand and just accept that we are functioning with that, in that space, and we're really trying to move to a place where we want to be restorative, where we want to take those dollars, divest from dominant culture and structures, and invest in new culture and structures. And we really want to draw down power from board and staff to really make sure we're supporting community, to ideally and be in a place where they have resources to govern themselves. And if we're able to move as many resources as possible to meet the needs of frontline movement folks and food justice folks, they are the ones that will imagine what that regenerative economy looks like, how it should be built in place, and with people in co-stewardship of this. So again, this is also probably another 3-day retreat, but I'm just kind of like just saying with you all, when we think we're not saying, oh my gosh, us in philanthropy have to take on the just transition, but we have to see our responsibility and role, particularly when we're working in the space of contradiction, right? We're working in a place where this wealth was accumulated, with systems that are very extractive. And we actually have access and decision-making power to start moving resources out and building new support systems for frontline food justice folks to really imagine in community what they would do to sustain this earth and be in co-stewardship of it. Again, we can break this down, it's a whole retreat, but we could do this. But this is kind of our framing and where we see we can come in and really be true partners and not just be in our heads about it, but understand where we are in this beautiful framework that really has this vision of this world, the world that we want to be in relationship with each other. Okay. Whew. All right. Okay, yeah, let's go, dude. Because people are like, sometimes you'll hear philanthropy, all that guilt, shame, and blame stuff, and it's like, no, wait, actually, we are trying to do good. We just have to understand where we are in this. How do we partner appropriately? And then, in many ways, it's not just getting out of the way, it's really understanding our role and being grounded in it and in your purpose. And so when you're walking with frontline folks, resource mobilizers, people on the ground, I know what I'm doing here. I need to stay in philanthropy with my social justice heart and mind and my hands and my feet. And we really want to create a space where folks that are not just, thinking about it, but we really want to create community of folks that are in this field, because we ourselves in philanthropy with this framing are contradicting dominant culture of the field too. And it just looks very different, but we're walking alongside our movement folks who are really working on the ground to have the expression of just transition in their communities. I'm going to let you jump in there.
Thank you so much, Kimmy. So we also just wanted to offer, just as kind of building on this, kind of this tool we have here, some guiding questions towards restorative philanthropy. And some of you may be familiar with environmental impact assessments or racial impact assessments. And in some ways, this is similar. These are a series of questions that folks in philanthropy, as Kimmy, you mentioned, there's many folks trying to create change, trying to do good things. And also it's how can we make this change in a way that is really aligned with movement partners on the ground and aligned with just transition. So this tool is really a guide for folks in philanthropy who are trying to make that change to ask themselves a series of questions that are tied to the pillars of the economy. So there's worldview, resources, work, purpose,
moral, and
mentioned. And there's all of these different questions. We're not going to go into these in depth today, but did just want to offer this of this is something that folks in philanthropy can use and really, to guide in making that change. So,
Yeah, and I'll just say that oftentimes in folks that are working in foundations or being liaisons to community, you are pressured to make decisions or judgments about things. And so our Just Transition framework is here. We're going to be releasing in January our resonance framework, which is really what we're showing you right now. This has been 5 years in existence where we have an inquiry-based process where folks are interrogating what their purpose is in philanthropy, and because there is no cookie cutter, answer. There is no checklist. So we've decided to keep it in an inquiry-based way. And in February of 2024, the update of this and a lot of tools and learnings will be there to be able to apply the framework. That's what we often do, are supporting folks in philanthropy to be in partnership with their movement folks on the ground, to then understand and map out, well, if our worldview is this, then might our work be about actually shifting and investigating, responding to the legacy of wealth? How might we undo that? And then so there's questions here. Or we understand the purpose of us working in philanthropy might actually be redistribution, rematriation, and reparations, if we're really truly trying to move to that. But instead of being prescriptive, we're really offering questions. Once you identify that purpose and what your philanthropy's role, purpose, and what you want it to be inside the just transition.
So we really also want to ground in place here. We know good work that is taking place in San Diego by resource mobilizers as well as funders here. So we are so honored to have folks from Catalyst San Diego here this morning with us. And so I'm going to actually pass it off to Alina, who's going to share just a little bit of context about what is kind of like the funding landscape here, and to kind of guide this update. We have a few questions for Alina. So one is, in the field of philanthropy here in San Diego, what is already sprouting? And also, when we center community love and healing, what would philanthropy feel like? So this could be a whole session, I realize, within itself. But Alina, thank you so much for just giving us a few minutes of some context to really ground here.
Yes. Hi. Hello, thank you. My name is Aline Vracic. I'm the Director of Programs and Learning for Catalyst of San Diego and Imperial Counties. My pronouns are she and her. Thank you for inviting me. I'm so thrilled. When we were talking a few weeks ago on Zoom, I'm already energized about what we can do together next year. So I am going to read from some notes because we're still putting together a report. So Catalyst is a philanthropy serving organization, and what that means is we have members who are funders, all within San Diego and Imperial counties. So there's a report that was put out recently from Catalyst, asking funders a few questions, actually probably a lot of questions, right, Melissa? Yeah. And some interesting tidbits I wanted to share today were half of the funders say that they have been giving general operating funds and multi-year funding, which of course provides more autonomy and flexibility. So that does seem to be a shift that's taken place. And that has also echoed in USD's nonprofit survey that they've recently done, so nonprofits also agree with that sentiment. Additionally, 3/4 of funders and nonprofits say that funders are seeking input from nonprofits about granting. So that's, again, another really important step in the right direction. And as it relates to the topic at hand, our focus today, a few other interesting things are that climate has been a very big topic in the funding spectrum, but it's kind of unclear. So maybe we're not necessarily getting there in terms of specific funding for climate, but it could be getting in that direction. Workforce and economic development, which are also important in just transition, are gaining attention from philanthropy. And impact investing, which is the strategy of investing into companies, organizations, funds with the intention of generating a measurable, beneficial social or environmental impact, is definitely of increased interest among Catalyst members. And then finally, people power, organizing, movement building, that a just transition needs is a growing topic of interest in philanthropy. And just like from a personal note, we have a conference next week, actually, at California Center for the Arts Escondido, and the focus is all about wealth, power, and community. We're going to focus on topics relating to inclusive economies, reparations, and then Melissa and I have jointly put together, Melissa, by the way, is our Director of Membership. Come on up, Melissa. Come on up. Yes. She's fantastic, and we have a topic focused specifically on equitable grant making. So we're talking all about that, on what we can do. And so just quickly to answer questions, that's what's sprouting. So next year, in terms of the programs that we're developing, we're going to really focus on supporting funders and foundations, and learning how they can continue down the spectrum of getting more equitable in their funding. And I think the community love piece is all about just how we're trying to integrate community-based organizations more. So we have almost 50% of our attendees next week being community-based organizations. So we're really excited about that, and we're going to keep the momentum going. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's so exciting to hear all that is sprouting here in San Diego. To really ground it in place. Thank you so much to both of you for your work and for the update. So I'm sure at this point there are
The impact you've seen.
questions that folks have in the room, and we want to be able to give you a chance. There's Post-its. There's some heart Post-its, some square Post-its. So if you have questions at this point, we want to invite you to write your question on a Post-it. Kimmy and I will go around and pick those up. We have a garden here. We're going to put our questions in this garden so they can continue to bloom, and we can touch on those questions throughout the day. So any questions, go ahead and put those down. And I'm going to pass it to Kimmy to actually continue to ground us in place based on the resource mobilizers here in the region.
Thank you, Jessie. So we heard from Catalyst here, and part of what we wanted to lift up and some of the imagery that we'll be showing shortly actually came from San Diego Food System Alliance's resource mobilizers, resource organizing workshops that happened around March 30th of 2023. They were also facilitated by Masala Consulting and Chantal, who actually will be facilitating the next session related to this afternoon. But really the focus areas when they gathered in their retreat, how do we reimagine what this traditionally seen as fundraising and development, what are we actually doing? And we really are trying to center relationships and bring people in to this work versus having it just exist in a transactional manner. So that's where resource mobilizing, that particular umbrella of a term, has been what that actually means. And the focus areas that during their workshops that they were exploring with each other is, one, just naming the harm. Like, well, how has philanthropy and its systems, so we're not talking about, people when we're listening to this, we're talking about naming the harm that this particular system that is made up of people, obviously, but how has it caused harm to our communities? And then they said the second section was really about reclaiming the values that they want to see in the world. That they want to center. And the last one, which we actually just, we're going to be letting you all work with this, is what's already sprouting. And when we center community love and healing, what would resource organizing feel like? We actually want to think about what would philanthropy feel like, too, if we were actually in partnership with there. So I just actually going to ask Jessie we're going to put these up for a second. I just want to let you all see it. And they're going to be here on this wall here. But you kind of see here in this yellow poster, naming the harm. They're really talking about mission creep, unrealistic expectations set on community. The way that philanthropy is set up in an extractive economy means there's a lot of competitiveness, and that it's really everyone is in survival mode or scarcity mindset, right? It's really hard to stay in abundance. That also the field, also an extractive economy, relies on restrictive funding. We're going to give you a little piece here, you a little piece here, and we got to make sure that actually you're using it right. And then there's this, this kind of worldview that we're saving people, particularly scripted roles. Like, I'm supposed to do this, you're supposed to do that. This is where the expertise lies. This is where, and we're here to advise you or to tell you what to do. So these are a lot of things, and this isn't actually just here in San Diego. It is a system. These are the things that we are also working with, because it is really difficult, even as a person, to really understand, like, this is my workplace, and this is what I'm swimming in. And you can feel that at times in the space. And that's why also Justice Funders, similar to resource mobilizers, is based on relationship and finding people with like-minded values. And so that second, the second poster here and imagery here. And I just also want to give out a shout out to their graphic recorder, Corey Lynn Nakamura too. And their information will be there. But they talked about if we were to be in right relationship with this kind of work that we do, we'd be reclaiming values, right? And thinking about moving towards our own traditional values, moving towards asset-based approach, and really moving from the extractive colonized kind of framework to being active values of decolonization here. So you have words here like respect, reciprocity, trust, joy, equity, community, health, love, empathy, interdependence, transparency, justice, care, self-determination. I mean, I can even feel that in my body feels so different. Just saying that out loud and understanding this is my purpose work. I am actually in philanthropy to hold these values every day. You know, I may have to go through a system that perpetuates what was on that slide before, but this is actually really what we're trying to do when we say we're trying to be in relationship with folks. And really their call was like, let's move a paradigm shift, you know, that really honors asset-based community development and really centers Indigenous values. And so they spent a whole, you know, session on this too, working with each other, and these were the conversations that arose from that. And then in this last piece here, really they were like, what would the practices, what if we center love and community and health and healing, what would resource organizing feel like? And this is the imagery that they came up with. And we'll give you a chance, we're gonna leave this one up too, but they saw folks showing up in community more, a lot of more play and internal work, time for internal work and relationship building, creating more spaces for communities centering themselves, taking care of their inner child, you know, like that's a good one right now. More space and time to be in community, thinking about abundance. There's a sandbox over there with folks being able to innovate and play. There's a lot happening here. So we're just kind of giving you, we want to drop you into the work that is happening with resource mobilizers here so that we can build off of this and make connections of our own that is in relationship to this conversation here. So what we're going to do is now introduce, we can go to the next slide, I think. Oh, yes, awesome. So I just wrote, kind of giving you a narrative piece. I know there's a lot of folks here. Hopefully some people were able to see it. If you feel like you'd want to stand up, you can take a look at the posters here that printed up. But we just wanted you to maybe go and draw yourself to one or think about one that kind of resonates with you or you're curious about. And just like write a note or two about what's coming up for you as you see this, knowing that we're in this context, in a philanthropic setting. How did these imageries of these three conversations land with you? And just maybe make a mental note of that for yourself, either on a piece of paper or just in there. Like when I went from the yellow to this green to the like blue sky, just like what came up for you in those moments as I read those things out loud. And take a deep breath in and release with the big sound. One more in and out.
We have now been grounded, thank you so much, by Catalyst San Diego, by the work of the resource mobilizers, and we want to continue to build on this by the wisdom in this room. And we're going to have some opportunity now, as we mentioned in our conscious community agreements, to engage in some play as well. So I'm going to go ahead and start us off. I just want to kind of like re-bring this to us. I think this graphic specifically is about possibility. So this is what we're really going to lean into as we are kind of doing some dreaming together this morning. So what we're going to do first is we're actually going to do a little bit of solo reflection. Kimmy's going to play some music. And we want to reflect on these three questions ourselves first. Know that later we will have opportunity to share with one another. So first, just from your perspective, in philanthropy, what is already sprouting? And then when we center community, love, and healing, what would philanthropy feel like? And then imagining your own funder movement relationships, what kind of practices and relationships do you want with funders you know? So we're going to take 5 minutes. We'll play some music. Take some time to reflect on these. You're welcome to write some notes or just reflect in your mind, whatever works best for you. So, and thank you for the music, Kimmy.
If you have Post-its or ideas, please put them up. I think what we wanted to do is, try and collect, could we continue in our relationship here to be in relationship to these conversations and say, what is our accompaniment with you? What does it look like for us in philanthropy to walk with you in these questions? So the other piece, when we center community, love, and healing, what would philanthropy feel like? What was some of the conversations that y'all said something. Yes, y'all were chatty. Please stand up and introduce yourself too.
Hello, my name's Ryan, they, them. I really am enjoying the mutual aid organizations that are all over San Diego. What comes to mind is the Collective Coalition, which is very trans-run, but then it's intersectional through lots of issues. And I think that often roles like that become just an LGBT center and they're seen as just that in a separate bubble, which isn't the case and hasn't been how mutual aid has worked ever, really. So, yeah. And then Border Kindness and We All We Got are other organizations that they often work with.
Oh yes, and I love that they're printed inside your thing. Let's give that, snaps and jazz hands. What else for this conversation? This side of the room, no one has said anything, but I know you all had a lot to say. What would it feel like? What would these relationships feel like, or what does it do feel like? Yeah, please introduce yourself too.
Sure. Hello, my name is Bianca. I'm with Botanical Community Development Initiatives, and I think a big thing that comes up for me is trust in that that we know the communities that we work in and live in.
Yes, beautiful. Big one, trust, and trust. Yeah, and trust that wisdom and trust those perspectives and bet on it again and again. And you know what? Our communities on both sides, we get to make some mistakes, and it's actually really important that we get to trust in the learning and iterative process. We're not always going to get it right the first time, but we're going to learn a lot and make the next time even better and stronger. So I want to just name that too, because I think trust shows up in the ability to fund and support communities over time versus being like, you got to make it, falling into perfection, falling into these things that actually oftentimes pits and starts to create more of this too if we're not doing that also. All right, one other? Yes, I got a hand over there. See, I am running. I knew I was going to do it. I didn't know we were going to be a full house.
Hi, everyone. Valerie Herrera with the City of San Diego's Sustainability and Mobility Department. I'm very honored, actually, to play the role of the city's climate equity specialist, pronouns she, her, ella. So I wrote down for number 2 on what would it feel like as, for me, it would feel like truly and intentionally filling the gaps of inequities that continue to exist and impact communities in a negative way, both climate and environment.
Thank you. Yeah, snaps, jazz hands. Any others? Going once, got one? Yep. You want to go to the last one? Please introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Katie with UPAC. My pronouns are she, her. I just want to open the space to thank all of the young revolutionary individuals in this room that are pushing this change. I've only been in the fundraising space about 6 months, but I know there are big things that are happening, and we're holding, like Dan, individuals over here, that are pushing our funders to change this narrative. So I just want to thank everyone in here for doing that work.
Thank you. 6 months, 20 years. We're always in deep gratitude with each other, and we need that perspective. Both we're touching in and we've been in it. We need both and just being able to drop into gratitude as much as possible. That we get to do this work, this exciting work. Okay, last question. Imagining your funder movement relationships. What kind of practices and relationships do you want with funders you know? Imagining your funder and movement relationships. What kind of practices and relationships do you want with funders to know? You know. What was that last? Did anyone get to the last question? We got it? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Neville, Mission Fed, he, him. So the last 2 questions for me were kind of connected because feel like and relationship seemed hand in glove. But the things that came up for me was a power rebalancing, harmony and healing, shared success models, about both values and value. And at the end of the day, it feels authentic and embodied. So it's something we're feeling. It's not just something that's sitting in our heads cognitively.
Beautiful. Yes. Thank you.
Hi, Shannon Ratliff. I'm with Suncoast Market Co-op, pronouns she, her, ella. I agree. These two were very similar for me. And in our experience, what I'd really like to see is to echo the part about trust, of realizing that communities know what they need. And so a lot of times funding there's a lot of like specific boxes that have to be checked. And if you can't fit into that exact box and you do experience like creativity and you're like in the sandbox, it's hard to find funding in that. What one community might need a community garden, another one like ours needs a grocery store, right? And then with that, I think accessibility is really important. I'd like to see more accessibility in the funding space. The grant process is very tedious, requires a lot of expertise. Not everyone has that and is able to do that. And then not everyone is able to do the complicated reporting that goes with it. So accessibility is a huge problem that I'd love to see solved.
Hi, Jamie Fanous, she, her. I think a willingness to take radical political risks. Yes. There is a massive, massive hesitation from funders to fund political and advocacy work. So yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of you in those trenches with me.
Hi, I'm Amanda from Foods San Diego, and I'm actually on the marketing team, so I've been thinking about, what my role is in this space, and I love that you just said storytelling, because that's my primary role, is sharing stories, going out, talking to the people that are receiving our services, and something that we implemented recently was a storytelling compensation policy, and so I think it's really important to recognize that these people in the communities, having them come and provide their area of expertise and their experience is valuable, and it's important to compensate for that. It's important to create spaces that actually, work for them to take time and to share that. So,
yes, narrative strategies and change work. All right. Any others? Burning ones? Yeah. Sun. And then I'll get you over there too.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for putting this on, by the way. My name is Sundarajan Mutialu. My nickname is Sun. We're new to San Diego, and I have to say I congratulate you on the kind of organizations that are doing everything from food security to looking at the health of the community as well as our children. But when we did come in, we saw a lot of siloed, and it seemed to me, and this is just from the outside, actionable sort of purposeful collaboration, the word you just spoke about a moment ago there, it would be very welcome on our part anyway. So we're always out looking for that. One of the things I wanted to say, which I think fits even the Mobius that you had there, which I showed you on our website, is there as well. And that's to do the real food security after what happened with COVID and being able to feed our children really quality food. But one of the things that we don't want to forget, I think, as a group and as humans, is we are part of Mother Nature. Mother Nature has a very symbiotic way of taking care, and we are a part of that. So that's the master that we should be following. And those kinds of systems are already in place. We just have to emulate them. But I just wanted to say thank you, and if there's any kind of potential actionable radical type of collaborations, I'm right here, and I'd like to do that just moving here. So appreciate it. Thank you.
And last one. Here we go.
I'm Jake Wild-Korea, and he, him. And when I imagine philanthropy, it's philanthropy that values people over systems and processes. People over systems and processes.
Yeah, With that, yes. Yeah, we all want that. And we know that every little bit counts, every change, every time we innovate or try something a little different. Because philanthropy has this stretch, it can actually ripple out in really interesting and big ways. So we're gonna get to our closing and integration here. So we're gonna give you a little bit of time to just reflect on this question. And then we're also gonna give you a little bit of space. We wanted to answer some of those questions that came up too. But just take a moment to write down for you, what is one appreciation or insight you'll take with you from this session? Or what action will you take to further integrate this shared experience? And we're gonna give you a minute or two to just ponder that. And reflections often become actionable commitments in reality when we get to speak it to somebody. So when you or your person, your neighbor is ready, and you have answered one of these, make eye contact with someone, and then just share it out loud. Share it out loud. Put your breath and your word on it. And then we will also give you a moment to answer some of these questions here that you all have put up. And I'll just give you.
Oh, it's beautiful. You're all beautiful. Awesome. Well, we had some wonderful, wonderful questions that came up here in our garden. So we wanted to also just let you know a little bit about how to stay connected and also ways that we can also kind of follow up around some of these questions as well. So thank you all for signing our sign-in sheet. If you haven't, let me know and we can pass it around. Yeah. I want to also let you know that we have these postcards on the table. There's a QR code on the back. If you want to scan the QR code, you can get our contact information, a link to our website. There's also upcoming events that are taking place. Just a great way to learn more. And that is important because there were some questions, right? Some big questions around like, does philanthropy ever see itself working itself out of a job? Which is such an important question. And as Kimmy was mentioning, in February, Justice Funders will have our State of the Movement. We will be releasing the second version of our resonance framework, and we'll be diving much deeper into questions just like that. So we want to invite you to come to our State of the Movement, and you can learn more about that if you scan the QR code. I also want to mention to folks, for funders in the room, we're going to be staying here in this space, and we would love to have you join us for lunch to continue this conversation. So please join us there. There were also a lot of questions around like, okay, this is great in theory, but what does this actually look like in practice, right? How do we actually create this change in practice? Also, what does this mean for like investments? And these are great questions, and I'm so excited to share with you that Kimmy is going to be on a panel in the same room after lunch called Mobilizing Community Control, where we'll actually be going into some very tangible examples around investments and also practices as well. So that will really help to ground us. So we hope to see you there at that panel. And with that,
and then I'll just say, we're also just here to be in relationship and get in relationship. So Sona and Ali, we're going to be continuing in conversations with Catalyst too, just how can we support this amazing spirit and intention that is already here. And we want to do that and then lift up the storytelling as, we were talking about. We like to tell the stories on a national level of really what happens in these regional spaces. So that's our intention here, is to build relationships and connect with your work ongoing. So thank you again for being here with us. Here are the upcoming resources and events. Again, it's on this QRC code. And then I think we just want to say thank you so much. I wanted to I think we have, okay, great. It's 11:30. So y'all, just give yourselves also a round of applause here for coming through, spending some time with us. We will see you during the rest of the conference.